Oh, my gosh, Carlos, that was really quick. You just got here 2 seconds before I spoke because you were caught in traffic, weren't you? Oh, my gosh.
I know.
You flew in like Superman, not a rock star.
Just right on time.
2 seconds.
2 seconds. I think this was the closest we've ever done it.
We have, and we're like, we're here. You're
That's
here.
it. Blame the traffic. You always got to blame something else.
You do.
I suppose I could have left earlier. And I always say to people, plan and look at me. I'm running right on time. Yeah, running around.
Well, you're here, and that's the main thing. Great to see you.
Yeah, thank you. Same. Great seeing you, Deb.
Great. Well, we've been talking about coercive control for the last 3 weeks. This is our last chat because we had a listener ring after our last one, and he spoke about coercive control involving manipulation of children, like punishing their partners, and children being taken away, and the effects like post-traumatic stress can happen. How do we get around this sort of thing?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's so common, these things. I hear about it all the time in my work, of course, and we all know people that are involved in that. It's a shame, isn't it? Because I suppose two people, like, they fall in love, they decide to get married, they have kids, everything's okay, and then things don't work out.
Yeah.
They start arguing, and they work out that they're best to separate, and they're going to live better lives separated.
Yes.
And that's fine. Sometimes we have to make difficult decisions.
Yeah.
And when we separate without children and without capital, it's much easier. Mm-hmm. But once you have capital, and especially children, you're tied for life. So I always say to people, like, you divorced or you separated because you argued too much. So that should be resolved now. You shouldn't be arguing anymore.
Yeah, that's right.
That's the reason you separate. So, and some people, it gets worse. They argue more, and of course the children get involved, or they get the children involved.
They're pawns, really, at times.
That's right, and it's a shame. It's a real shame.
It is
for that to happen. But anyway, I mean, it's one of those things that, look, just so then people that are going through that now, to know that they're not alone. It's unfortunately very common.
Yeah.
And when we're in that situation, we have to remain rational and make sure that then if one of the adults is doing that the other person decides not to do that.
That's
it's very
right.
important.
Because one won't let go at times of the relationship, and that's when that can happen, isn't it?
That's correct. And unfortunately, look, the best advice I can give people when they come to me in a professional setting is to seek legal advice.
Yeah.
Because the more they try, maybe it's worse, because the other person realizes that now they have some leverage over them. Okay, you want to see the kids? Well, I won't let you see the kids. Or, okay, if I even know situations where legally it's already stated and stipulated that the person sees the kids or comes over on the Saturday, and suddenly on that Saturday the kids are sick or they're not there or whatever, and there's not much the other person can do. So, look, legal, definitely try to find legal advice without a doubt, which can be costly. And then if nothing works and all else fails, my advice to people in that situation is, look, just be there. Be there for the kids, even if it's now and then, because you're going to get your chance. And it's all about quality time, not quantity. You can do a lot when you see them. And if you see them and you've got a smile on your face and you're not talking about their mother or their father in a disparaging way, the kids are smarter than what you think. They realise and they pick up on it, and as they get older, they start making sense of it all. And I've seen how it's all backfired on that person who initially used coercive control with a kid, because the children then realise that, hang on, maybe dad isn't as bad as what I did think, or sometimes mum, of course, but we're talking, because I think your listener was a male, and that situation was quite unique to him. But it's more common, of course, that when people separate, that either there's 50% custody, or usually the mother has them, because the kids need the mother at a certain age. Yeah, and in some relationships it works well. People separate, they still remain civil. the kids are happy. They go to 2 houses.
It happens in most, doesn't it? That, like, probably the more percentages.
Yeah.
Do you think?
It does. Look, mostly people, after a while, they become a bit more civil.
Yeah.
Because they realise it's just too much energy put into it. Like, I've left that other person and they're still taking up all this energy. Or they might realise that now I can be happier, or they eventually may meet somebody else, and sometimes they meet somebody else and realise that that first person wasn't so bad after all.
That can happen, can't it?
Look, I've got lots of examples of different types of situations and variations of it all, but
you would.
Mostly, ideally, it's this. You get married, you live happily ever after.
Yeah.
Second ideal is you're not happily ever after, you separate, and now you're happy separated, and the kids are happy because you separate from your spouse, not from the children.
That's right.
You divorce your wife, you divorce your husband. You don't divorce the children. So as a parent, it should continue. And look, I've seen even some cases where people even become better parents after they're separate, and especially dads, because they've worked a lot. They've never, haven't had time to do things with the kids. Suddenly they separate. They've got to make time for the kids,
cook
and they
for
become
them and do all the things.
Yeah, they become a nice soccer dad.
Yeah, that's right. And it can cause, to some people that have the bad experiences, but it usually happens before they actually get legal advice, doesn't it? Where it's messy, when it's just the two of them that are, struggling, like manipulating the kids, or one of the people struggling, like manipulating the kids, or one of the people, one of the partners is. So once legal advice is sought, it usually can get sorted out a bit better.
Usually, because now what happens is it's unfortunate. Now you got 2 sets of lawyers communicating between themselves, and yes, it's a business, really. It becomes costly, and family court is really full of cases like this, and they do the best they can, but it's always the process, the problem. And
takes a while too.
It takes a while.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the longer it takes, it benefits some people more than others. So we have to make sure to try to avoid that first. But Deb, I mean, you touched on a really good point there, because it happens before, yes, and it also depends on how the separation happens.
Yes.
Some people separate because they fall out of love.
Yeah, but on the other hand, if someone has to leave because they're in threat of violence, then it's messier.
That's right, that's right. And there's many, or there's been infidelity, all these type of things come into play on how then those two people are going to react to each other after the separation. And of course, people get hurt during the separation, and then they want to hurt the other person for hurting them. And,
very sad.
And they use the kids, and that's the last thing we should do.
Yes.
Because it's not the kids' fault. The best... The best solution I heard, and I don't think any country's using it yet, but the best solution I heard for a divorce is 2 people, they get married. If they get divorced, they both leave the house. The kids stay in the house, and they come and take care of the kids in the house, and they both have to rent a separate house, which is very costly.
That's a good
but
idea.
I think it's the best thing to do.
Then the kids aren't dragged from house to house.
That's right. They stay in the house.
Different belongings in
and it's
house.
The adults now that have to now, in a way, take responsibility for the consequence. No one goes into a relationship to separate. I get that.
Yeah.
But if it happens, then it's up to the adults to work it out.
There, as adults.
That's right. And look, the system we have isn't fantastic, but it's quite good compared to most other countries. I think it's always great to be diplomatic and civil in any type of relationship, and especially when that relationship comes to an end, whether it's a romantic one, whether it's a marital one, whether it's a business one, whatever it may be, it's always best to try to leave with the doors open, because you just don't know. It always, look, my experience of it, that if one goes into that with goodwill, with diplomacy and civility, it usually works out well. If not, it backfires. Doesn't matter how long it takes, but it will backfire on you.
Okay, that's right, isn't it? And just quickly, to be aware, if one of your loved ones, say it's your brother, whatever, that's going through this, or your sister is at a threat of suicide, we have to recognise that again too, because that can, if children are taken away from one of the parents and they don't get to see them, they can have a threat of suicide.
Yes, that's right. And unfortunately, it does happen. It happens a lot.
Yeah.
And we don't hear many of those cases, of course, because it doesn't hit the media a lot. And but we all know cases that's happened, and famous people and so forth.
So just look out for that.
People become desperate.
Yeah.
And you know, one day you're in your house with the picket fence and your lovely spouse, the kids, and the station wagon with the wooden panel on the side.
Yeah.
And the next day you're sleeping in one of your mates' couches.
Yeah.
And without seeing your kids, it's tough. Yeah. And so we have to take care of each other.
We do. And thank you, Carlos, for coming in. We're going to talk about star signs. We're going to start talking about something like that, aren't we? Something a little bit different.
It's going to be a lot of fun.
It will be next time you come in. Well, thanks again, Carlos. It's been great talking about coercive control. That's really in the news at the moment, isn't it?
Yes, look, I enjoyed giving out the information, but it's one of those subjects that it takes a lot out of you, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. Well, thank you then. And you chose a great song from Mike and the Mechanics.
Yeah, The Living Years, love this song. I think Mike Rutherford wrote it, who's the main guitarist, and who's Mike from Mike and the Mechanics, who used to be the guitarist and still is of Genesis as well. So that's his little song. Okay. Did quite well, like
you
all the other boys.
Star. You do know your stuff.
A little bit. Well, all the Genesis boys did well, like Phil Collins, Peter Gabriel, and Tony Banks. But this song was great. He wrote it for his dad when he passed away, and I think it's beautiful.
It is. Thanks, Carlos. See you next time.